the National Student Financial Aid Scheme says it's commissioned an investigation that found no evidence to substantiate OUTA allegations of corruption. The civil society organization, you might remember, released a report on recordings that place former NSFAS Board Chair Ernest Khoza at the center of a ploy or discussions to receive kickbacks from service providers. NSFAS says it'll announce plans to implement the recommendations of its own findings. The scheme, of course, has been established to fund poor students who want access to post-schooling education and training and has supported more than 5 million beneficiaries so far. Let's discuss these developments. Bring in the newly appointed NSFAS Administrator, Mr. Freeman Nomvalo. Also joining our discussion today is OUTA's Investigations Manager, Rudie Heyneke. Both our guests joining us now via our video link. And it's lovely to have you both on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. Rudie, I wonder if we can just begin with you. Let's try and just revisit some of the contents of your own report before getting NSFAS's response about what their investigations have found.
Yes, thank you, Ayanda. The report that OUTA released was basically, regarding the recordings, 2 recordings of discussions that took place between Mr. Khoza and 2 other gentlemen. We released this report in January, early this year, January the 4th, and it was basically a recap of what was alleged and what was said by the 3 gentlemen while they were recorded.
Right, and I suppose that's where NSFAS then came in to try to do their own fact-finding. The announcement of, I'm trying to find the name, Chifedza attorneys was announced already some time ago, Mr. Nomvalo. I presume these are the recommendations of that particular report. What kind of questions were you asking at NSFAS as you commissioned this investigation?
Well, look, first, I really would rather be discussing what we should be doing to resolve the issues of NSFAS. Because I think the thrust of what OUTA was raising is not so much about the specific allegations contained in the report, more than it is about ensuring that NSFAS operates efficiently in a manner that serves our society as it was designed to do. So I'm not privy to the questions that the senior counsel and the lawyers really raised, but the substance of what they were doing is to go beyond just the recordings that Rudie is referring to say, yes, the recordings are making allegations, and OUTA was bringing attention to those allegations that the recordings are bringing out. And we needed to make sure that beyond just the allegations, is there evidence that somebody received money? Is there evidence that certain people met? To the extent that the 3 individuals that are referred to, the former chairperson and the other 2 individuals met, that is confirmed. There's no doubt about it. Even the report confirms that. But beyond that, allegations these individuals were making in their meeting don't seem to have evidence, or at least the report did not find that evidence. If that evidence exists, I think it would change the findings.
All right. And my line of questioning is only off the back of, the statement released by NSFAS, which has pushed back quite unequivocally against the claims that OUTA has made. And so we're trying to get to a sense of which part of those claims is NSFAS pushing back against. So you've conceded now that, in fact, there's no dispute around this meeting particularly taking place. And the question, I suppose, that remains largely unanswered is, in those meetings, did the people who are implicated follow through on those plans, apparently, to try and exert any kind of corruption at the scheme?
Well, I remember what these individuals were talking about is the influence in the appointment of the lawyers over and above other allegations. The only remaining factor is whether the appointment of the lawyers that were appointed because these individuals influenced that appointment. They chose the lawyers as well as they chose the individual concerned. The report finds that that is not the case.
Rudie, what's your response to that? Because, again, OUTA has come out very strongly to not only say these conversations took place, but there was a very clear intent in these discussions.
Yes, I think before I get to that, I just want to mention the following, and I think Mr. Nomvalo alluded to that as well. Firstly, the report, the NSFAS report or the TGR report, mentioned that what OUTA accurately, transcribed what was said in the recordings,
right,
in our report. That's one thing that's very important. The second thing is that Mr. Khoza admitted that that it was his voice on that recordings, and that he met on 2 occasions with Mr. Tula Ntumba and Mr. Joshua Maluleke. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is, of course, I think it is undisputable now that these recordings are authentic. And in the light of that, I think that it is necessary to look at especially what was said by these 3 individuals and investigate those allegations that were made. And I think, like Advocate Mokari said in his report, we're sitting with the same problem. We don't have the authority or the powers, like the law enforcement agencies, to subpoena people or documents or bank statements, cell phone records, and the likes. And that is why there is a criminal case at this point in time. There is also an investigation done by the SIU, and the onus are on those 2 agencies to investigate it further and to look at the allegations, because all the other questions have been answered. So now they have to concentrate on the allegations that were made and the conversation that took place during those 2 meetings. The other thing that Mr. Nomvalo alluded to was the appointment of Werksman's attorneys. If there was an influence by Mr. Ntumba or not to appoint these Werksman's attorneys, I think that point is moot at this stage, because Werksman's did the investigation. Everybody adopted the report. The NSFAS Board adopted the report. The minister gave his blessings on the report, and NSFAS is busy implementing those recommendations. So I think, if they were influenced or not, that point is certainly moot at this stage.
Yeah. In some ways, the recommendations of that report were at the heart of at least part of the minister's reasons for dissolving the board. I mean, there had been so many of them where he felt, or so many instances, I beg your pardon, where he felt the recommendations simply weren't seen through. And I suppose, Mr. Nomvalo, this is an opportunity to get us that update around the work that had been done to try and finally see through those corrective measures as recommended by the Werksman attorney's report, to try finally get NSFAS on the right path.
Well, our lawyers are dealing with those issues. One of the things that the Werksman's report recommends is that the appointment of the payment providers that are the subject of these conversations was irregular. And our lawyers are dealing with that issue as we speak. And at the right time, we'll make the announcements that would be the outcome of that. Advisedly, in fact, it is prudent that I don't say any further than that, but rest assured, we are dealing with the issues that came out of the Werksman's report and other matters that are coming out of the public that relate to the functioning of NSFAS and the ensuring that we hold everyone accountable in relation to the wrongdoing that they may have done.
Sure, I respect that. Are you able to at least tell us if these service providers at the center of these recommendations are still currently interacting with NSFAS?
Yes, they are. They are, as we speak. Even if you were to sever ties, you've got to have a process that ensures that what they were meant to do or what they are doing is in fact being done. Students must receive their allowances, service providers must be paid, and all of those things. So you're not going to just stop everything and walk away. You do need to make sure that you do not, at the same time, while doing that, disadvantage the students. Students must be the center of our focus in everything that we do.
All right, fair enough. I suppose, even the principle of pausing these relations while investigations continue would have an adverse effect on the students. I think that's the point you're making. Nonetheless, we really are spoiled for choice, Mr. Nomvalo, when it comes to dealing with the many other issues that students are facing. There are issues to do with accommodation, for example, where people feel they haven't been paid accordingly. In fact, in some instances, these service providers, those who give accommodation, have started withdrawing their services until they feel like these issues have been sorted out. And again, in that instance, it's students who are left out in the lurch.
Absolutely. And it's an undesirable state of affairs, which is why on Friday we made a call to all service providers that they please send their queries through a dedicated email, and there is a dedicated team that is going through that email and a team that's going to be reviewing that, ensuring that the necessary validations are made so legitimate claims can be settled and students can focus on the studies. Students should do nothing other than just going to class and going to the rooms where they do their studies, research, whatever they're doing. There should be nothing beyond that students are engaged with as a result of our activities or lack of our delivery on the things we're supposed to do. And we're trying to make sure that that happens. We made the call. We hope that all the service providers will use the channel that we have created. And I assure all of them that all legitimate claims will be settled.
What is the reasonable amount of time that these service providers should give NSFAS before they pull the plug? I mean, of course, nobody wants students to be affected by what's taking place, but there has to be understanding from where they're coming from. I mean, the properties they use need to be serviced. They're running businesses that are sustained by making an income, ultimately.
Look, I think they've been very kind thus far to have stayed with us for as long as they have done. So I am mindful of the fact that this causes untold hardships to them, and hence I want to deal with it as quickly as possible. I do not want to prescribe, but I want to appeal to them that I'm here to resolve the matters. I'm here to make sure that all legitimate claims are paid, and therefore let's work together to make that happen.
Rudie, let me bring you back into the discussion. Part of what's really featured prominently in these ongoing discussions around how to fix NSFAS is whether or not introducing these fintech companies, these service providers, actually works. Students, depending who you speak to, have complained about delayed payments in some instances. It feels like centralizing the system at NSFAS has expanded the dysfunction, if you like. What I mean by that is that a whole lot more institutions are affected by non-payments or delayed payments. From your vantage point, how does NSFAS fix that? Because it seems by trying to fix one issue, they've inadvertently created another one.
I think the solution lies in a real direct payment system, and cutting out the middleman. I heard Mr. Nomvalo a while ago in an interview on radio where he said that, if government and public institutions can pay about 2 million people every month without any problems, why can't NSFAS do it? And we're asking the same question.
Right.
So that is the thing, how to solve this is to really make direct payments. Now, that was, unfortunately, in place 2 years ago, or not 2 years ago, in the beginning of the end of 2020, when Mr. Nongogo was appointed, and he cancelled that tender that was on the brink of being awarded to FNB at that stage, and that can be found in the Werksmans report, one of their findings. If that action did not take place at the end of 2020, and I can assure you that we would have had less problems, a lot less problems now with students receiving their allowances. The other thing that's also worth to mention is that last year, when the Werksmans report came out, the board made the decision to say we're not going to pull the plug on the fintech companies now because we don't want to disrupt the students. The problem that we have with that statement is that even the fintech companies keeping on paying these students, it was in any case very problematic, and there were a lot of problems, students not receiving their allowances, etc. And then at the beginning of this year, the board under acting chairperson Van Staden introduced the solution of let the institutions, the universities, take over the payment. And the question that we ask is, why could that decision to give it back to the institutions not have been done last year already when the report came out? And we would have seen less issues and less problems, because I think Mr. Nomvalo will agree with me that we see now that the institutions are paying the allowances of the students, that there are less issues from the students themselves, especially with regards to their living allowances.
Given your own observations so far, Mr. Nomvalo, and I'm very aware that you've only just recently taken up this position, what view are you building around the usefulness of these service providers, given what's been laid out?
Look, you only need an intermediary when that intermediary is adding value in the process.
Right.
Now, adding an additional step, unfortunately, attracts additional costs, which reduces the funds and resources available to service students. So the attitude that is prevailing is that we need to do direct payments, and we need to get to that point as quickly as possible, because it's to the benefit of the students. Anybody that militates against that, militates against us ensuring that we serve our society better.
And I suppose there's going to be questions around why these service providers were introduced to begin with. But with the time we have left, I'll leave that to everybody else's own thinking. What sense are you getting around how long, Mr. Nomvalo, it will take to finally get NSFAS to where everybody wants to, whether it's OUTA, the students, the universities, I have no doubt yourself, a system that works, that is functional, because no matter where you stand on the socioeconomic divide in this country, there is no overstating just how important an institution like NSFAS is and how crucial it is for it to work.
Look, I don't want to speculate on the timelines, but I think we do need to address some specific issues very quickly. One, the issues of accommodation. They have got tragic consequences for students, as those who are female may end up being raped and all of those things. So there are real life tragic consequences if that issue is not addressed. The issues of student allowances, them receiving them in time. You may have seen in the last few weeks students burning tires on campuses because the allowances are disappearing in the system of payment that is being used. So that must be addressed as quickly as possible. There are outstanding financial statements in the closeout report, which ensures that the data that we're working with is credible. We need to address that issue as quickly. So there's a number of issues. Some of them will take a bit of time, but I think the 12 months that we are given should put us on course to address most of these issues more effectively. Some will take longer than that. Fine.
Right. Rudie, of course, we've been here before in some ways, and not to sound like a cynic, but there have been a number of interventions in the past. This is not the first time the NSFAS Board has been dissolved. Are you optimistic this time that this is the turnaround we've been waiting for?
There are certain pointers that makes us optimistic about this. First of all, I've seen, I think it was a week or two ago, a large number of new vacancies or posts at NSFAS being advertised, especially in the ICT sector. And I think, if NSFAS can get their systems up and running and smoothly running, interacting with the institutions, that will obviously be a huge step forward. So that is a positive. The other positive is that I think Mr. Nomvalo and myself are agreeing on the fact that, we need to see a real direct payment system and not, with intermediaries. That will be, and it sounds like NSFAS is going into that direction. So that is a positive. I did hear that private accommodation providers had a meeting or will have a meeting with Mr. Nomvalo in now some time. Those are all very positive outcomes, in the beginning of Mr. Nomvalo's tenure. And I do wish him well and hope that, he will be able to sort out these issues, because NSFAS is too important to fail. The intervention that took place in 2018 to provide free education for a certain part of this society is huge, and we cannot let that fail. We cannot fail our youth. But at this stage, I must admit, I don't think that the students are very happy and very positive about NSFAS, and I do believe and I do hope that Mr. Nomvalo will have the opportunity and will be able to change the face of NSFAS and the working of NSFAS.
All right. Mr. Nomvalo has the well wishes of OUTA. Hopefully that's enough to keep you going.
And the
given
prayers.
mammoth task. And the prayers, you might add. Hopefully that's enough to get you through the mammoth task that lies ahead. For now, gentlemen, let me thank you for your time. Freeman Nomvalo is the newly appointed administrator at NSFAS. And speaking to us there was also Rudie Heyneke, the investigations manager with the organization Undoing Tax Abuse.